All right, what's up, guys, and welcome to episode 25 of Throwing It Around. I'm taking a break from softball. Brought you guys some notable D1 softball players, and one being a coach. Now it's time to jump into some Division I football, and I couldn't pass this opportunity up. And thanks to my local supporters, all of you guys will know him well. So enough of this chit chat. Let's talk with Virginia Tech Hokies offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach Tyler Bowen. Tyler, what's up, man? And well, first off, thanks for jumping in here with me. So, how's everything going up in Blacksburg?
It's good, Jacob. Thank you for having me on. Everything's good. It's kind of that tricky time of the year. I got one more week of vacation left, but I'm starting to get the itch. We've had a little time off here in the recruiting dead period, so got one more week off, and then it's full tilt boogie starting next Monday. So we're going to get rolling, get our guys back into town, which they've been here all summer, but we'll get them back into town off of a little break, start building up their volume to get ready to run during camp, and then it's go time leading into the season.
Oh, absolutely, man. I just by being a fan of college football, I can always tell that this recruiting period is always rough. I mean, like for the players and for you guys as well. I mean, it's a lot of hustle and bustle. I can tell.
Yeah, it never stops. It's a good thing. The thing that's probably changed the most, in the last 12 years is just the amount of classes that you recruit at one time.
Oh yeah.
Um, specific, Specifically, really diving into the quarterback position, you're recruiting guys eighth grade, ninth grade, 10th grade, and 11th grade all at one time. So you're having to manage multiple years, multiple classes, keep that organized. There's a ton of rules in play as far as,
Mm-hmm.
what you can and can't do, as we know with the NCAA. So that's probably been the biggest change, along with, obviously you see all the stuff publicized, but a big change in recruiting with the NCAA calendar has certainly been the summer and spring official visits. That's been a big change. So now when you hit spring ball time, you're managing official visits, spring practice. When you hit in the summer, you're managing that along with camps and everything you got going on with your guys. So it makes for June being probably the busiest month of the year outside of getting to the season. So it's all good stuff though. It's good to be busy.
Oh yeah, I mean, it certainly sounds like it, honestly, I can tell that a lot of people around here, I know, especially in the South. I mean, everybody lives and breathes football, and so everybody's ready to get back to it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So, being football is the topic of discussion today. So, I'll begin by just giving a rundown of like really who you are. Can let's rewind back to to your childhood. Can you tell us about maybe your childhood experiences growing up with the game of football and anything that might have shaped you into the Tyler we see today?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So, there'll be a lot of local listeners. So, obviously, grew up in Helena, Georgia. Really, actually started was born in Dublin, and then lived in Jacksonville for my first 4 years. But I always was into sports. My mom and dad always supported me getting into anything we want. So it was always football, basketball, baseball. So sports were always a big part of what we do. But my love for football really grew through my grandmother on my mom's side, Claire Browning. She took me to every Georgia home game from when I was 4 until I was 16 years old. So that really, going to those games and kind of seeing the passion for it, I really grew a love for the game. And then, once we got in high school, I stopped going to some of those home games because I was able to get recruited. Had some size, had a long way to go as a player, but certainly had some size. God had gifted me with some unique traits that help you play offensive line. So started getting recruited. College career didn't go any way that I thought it would. Came in redshirted, ended up shattering a bone in my foot. Had multiple surgeries, played a little bit my redshirt sophomore year, and then ended up medically retiring and finishing out my scholarship, which ended up being a blessing in disguise looking back on it because that's what got me into coaching. So I started right then. My head coach at Maryland was Ralph Friedgen. That's where I played college ball, University of Maryland. Should have backtracked to that. But Ralph Friedgen was the head coach. So when that happened and I couldn't play anymore, he said, hey, the only thing that gave you a shot is that you had a mind for the game, because you certainly weren't athletic enough. So that was his way. He's a funny guy, straight shooter. He's like, so, I think you should give this coaching thing a run. So I would work with the centers at practice, but it was the biggest blessing ever. He put me in the quarterback room. So got to be day in, day out with the offensive coordinator and quarterback coach, which at the time was James Franklin, who's now the head coach at Penn State. So I was there in that room with them for 2 years. We had a coaching change. James Franklin went down and became the head coach at Vanderbilt University, which I'll kind of backtrack to that and what part of that led me to Virginia Tech. But they went there. Randy Edsall came in, and immediately out of college, I got an opportunity to be a grad assistant at Maryland. Finished my master's, got a master's in education, working with offensive line, working with quarterbacks, tight ends, a lot of different positions. And you kind of do that as a young coach to get, just to get immersed in all parts of the game, because coaching's communicating, right? And if you can communicate well and you're knowledgeable, you can coach multiple positions. But anyway, just kind of going on that football journey from Maryland, got my first full-time job at Towson University as a tight ends coach under Rob Ambrose. We had a really good year, played in the national championship game in FCS that year, and got beat by the dynasty that's North Dakota State University.
Oh,
yeah. But we had a heck of a year, had some really good players, learned a lot. It was great getting my feet wet with a really good staff. Took a step back. James Franklin called me when he got the Penn State job and went to be a grad assistant again. And again, one of the best things that happened, because just like any business, football is a people business. And the more good people and you can learn from and share and steal ideas from, that's kind of going to build your network for your career. So going back in GA in there, I got to work hand in hand with the head coach at Virginia Tech now, Brent Pry. And I had first met him at Vanderbilt University when he was the co-defensive coordinator for Coach Franklin there. He had come from Georgia Southern at the time. They had put together a really good defense, had a lot of connections. He knew the state of Georgia well from recruiting. Obviously, I was from there. But anywho, so got connected with him and a lot of good guys. So GA'd there for 1 year, went to Fordham University in the Bronx, New York. That's Vince Lombardi. That's where he played. If people don't know that, it's pretty cool football history. Small FCS school in the Patriot League, but we were really good. Had the number 3 offense in the country. Was there as the offensive line coach under Joe Moorhead, who ended up being the head coach at Mississippi State as it circles around. But anywho, was there, became the coordinator the next year. We were able to do some really good things with some really good players and people. So ended up having the 3rd ranked offense in the country that year. Made a run at it. Patriot League schools, you don't have the same advantage as some of your other FCS programs, just from an academic standpoint. But we had a good year, great team. That was a fun experience. Got really fortunate. This was a funny story that led me back to Maryland. As you guys are listening, you can understand I moved a lot, and my wife Jenny's moved every one of them with me. She's awesome. It takes a special woman to be a coach's wife. But from Fordham, ended up I was recruiting for Fordham, and I always recruited the DC Maryland area, or the DMV as people call it, DC Maryland Virginia. Just from my time there, a lot of connections with high school coaches and things like that. So I'm down there recruiting. I stopped through my alma mater to make some connections. I really didn't know anybody on Coach Durkin's staff, and ended up hitting it off with the offensive coordinator. They're getting ready for a bowl game. He had me draw up a couple concepts. We got to talking ball, and then anyways, it led to an interview. And I ended up becoming the offensive line coach back at Maryland at my alma mater at a very young age. I felt very fortunate, awesome. But it's kind of funny how stars align, and just a chance to meet someone led to an interview with an opportunity to earn that job. I was there for a very short stint. That was 8 months, and it was a heck of a year. We learned a lot. If losing makes you learn and build character, we had plenty of it that year. And anyway, Joe Moorhead, who I'd first worked with at Fordham, he's at Penn State. He gets the Mississippi State head coaching job. Coach Franklin brings me back as the tight ends coach. I was there to just speed through this. I was there for, I believe it was 4 years or going on 4 years in different roles, always tight ends, but offensive recruiting coordinator, co-offensive coordinator, different things, titles. They don't always mean a whole lot. I was coaching the tight ends and trying to recruit as hard as I could. And then I got an opportunity because of working for Coach Durkin to get connected with Coach Meyer for an interview, and ended up working with the Jaguars for a quick season. But that was a great experience in the NFL. And I think the one thing, Jacob, that's probably brought perspective to me, and what I enjoy so much about is I don't view any of these experiences good or bad, regardless of how the record was. Each stop you meet so many good people, so many smart people. The records don't always indicate how good the coaches are, because there's a lot of things that are at play, but each one was able to learn so much, and that one was no different with the Jaguars. And some of the players met were incredible. And then we've been in Blacksburg, going on year 2 at Virginia Tech, a very good program, a program with good tradition, and we're charged with getting that back, and we got a lot of work to do. So that I don't know if that's what you were looking for. That's
no,
a long story. There's a lot of moves in there, man.
Trust me, that's fine. And I mean, the more and more I looked at my questions list, I mean, you were actually segueing to each next question. I was like, well, hey,
Sure.
this is making stuff fairly easy. I do want to backtrack to one thing where, how we did talk about recruitment and all of the athletes that I have interviewed so far. Is I always ask them the question of, why did you choose this school? Because everybody has a different answer. Some give you the same cookie cutter answer of like the environment, the family aspect. But what exactly in your recruitment journey, was there any schools that gave you offers that you didn't really expect to hear from?
Yeah, I didn't have. I wasn't
a surprise per se.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I really wasn't the type of recruit that had a ton of traffic or a ton of attention or a ton of offers. Ended up getting my first offer. It was back when you could go to these Nike showcases, okay, and they still have these, right? The Rivals camps, the Under Armour All American camps. They have those now, but it used to be Nike, and you could go to those and compete. And college coaches actually sent their staffs to those. So I went down to Gainesville, had been in communication with the University of Maryland. The head coach was there, and that got me my first offer, which as you learn in the recruiting process as a prospect, that it kind of only takes one, because there's a lot of people that are sitting on the fence and they don't know, should I trust my evaluation and think this guy's a good player? Well, when somebody else offers them, then they jump in. So it went from Maryland to Duke. That was Ted Roof's staff at Duke. They extended an offer, and those were really the two. Talked with South Florida a lot. There was a school that Helena, Georgia, I didn't know much about at the time, but Stanford was calling a lot.
Oh, wow.
And they wanted me to take the SAT and get a few higher, but I just couldn't get in my mind how I would ever go to California. And in hindsight, I wish I would have taken a little bit of a look at that educational experience.
Yeah.
But that one never came to fruition. I just always think that's a funny story. It's funny how your perspective changes. But anyways, it came down to Maryland and Duke, and I really wanted a combination. This isn't cookie. I wanted to win. Like where I went, I wanted to win. I wasn't getting like some of these programs competing for national titles at the time to offer, but I wanted to go to a place we competed in the bowl games, and the University of Maryland had that at the time. That was ACC Maryland, Ralph Friedgen. They were coming off some success, so that made me push the envelope forward and want to go there. I had a really good relationship with the offensive line coach. They spent a lot of time. Tom Bratton, still a huge mentor to me. He's retired now and just helping out in some consulting roles, but he was a big piece of it. And I felt like I could go and be my best self there. And biggest thing, get education but have a chance to win some ball games.
Oh, I love it. I know touching on that Stanford point that you made, a lot of people will say a lot of these East Coast schools per se. I mean, the education value that I've heard people talk about from Duke as well. I mean, those are, I guess you could call them one of the more pristine universities that have a strong athletic program. It may not be in football, but they have strong athletics altogether in that whole department.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of like, yeah, you're always looking though for a combination
Yeah.
if you really love the sport you're playing, right? So
Yeah.
it's gotta match, and that's where, I'll give you like, here for example at Virginia Tech, right? It's a top 25 public university in the country. It's you got 39,000 students, so if you're looking for a big school, fun place to go, it's got that. It's a beautiful college town in the mountains, and if you're a football player, like football's how the bread's buttered. Like this is a football school. Like that, people are going to make, their football decisions made, and not that we don't have a balanced athletic department, because we do. It was fun watching baseball and softball and the super regional, and our basketball teams doing some really good stuff. The women were in the Final Four this. I mean, we've got a great, strong athletic program, but that stadium, there's 70,000 people in Lane Stadium on Saturday afternoons and Thursday nights, and that's kind of the heartbeat. That's what you want as a coach or a player. So I think that becomes the big draw for prospects, right? When you look at, there are certain schools that can offer an unbelievable academic experience, but you're not going to have a football experience. You may win games, you're not going to play in front of anybody.
Right.
And I think overall, like the prospect that's competitive, which is the guy that we want on our team, like those guys are going to identify with those same qualities. And then the biggest thing I think that any prospect's looking for, I know I was, is like, coaches that don't take themselves too seriously. They're just genuine, down to earth, can have a conversation. It's not all about football all the time. You got to have a relationship, and outside of it, because that love and that bond is going to allow you to coach that player better. And I think, that's what we've been able to do here at Virginia Tech so far. As Coach Price put together a staff that I think we're genuine. We fit this place. We're out in the community. We can identify and communicate with young people, old people, everyone, our fan base, our donors, whoever that may be, and we, we're here, and we want to get maroon and orange back on track.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And if you look at your coaching journey now, going on to this next point, I mean, if people didn't know you, and I mean, they would look at this whole mapped out coaching journey that you've had starting in 2010 and say, well, you've been around the block, and per se, and that you must be a little bit more of a seasoned coach per se. But no, you're only 34, but you've made so many stops and made such a big impact at each spot. And now that you've made your way to Virginia Tech, and you're fairly well known per se. And my brother and I were discussing and saying that in terms of, I guess you could say, getting lots of attention per se. I mean, you really started hearing your name get thrown around at Penn State with Coach Franklin a lot. And I know, especially, correct me if I'm wrong, was it a bowl? Wasn't it a bowl game that you first started calling plays or jumped into an offensive coordinator role?
Yeah, we had some staff turnover at Penn State, which unfortunately and fortunately, that's part of of football. There's always some type of staff turnover, right? And so we had our offensive coordinator, Ricky Ronnie, left to go become the head coach at Old Dominion University. So that left a void in that game, and Coach Franklin was couldn't thank him enough. He named me the interim offensive coordinator for that game, and we ended up having a good game. Scored a lot of points, and I think that made an impression on the defensive coordinator I worked with, or I hope it did. And I think, myself, him seeing me professionally for the whole 4 years we were there together, I think that ultimately, led to this opportunity. And I never view it as like you're getting ready, for a job, like with an interview. You're always interviewing. It doesn't matter where you are. You're all, people are watching you, and they're taking note of how you go about your business and your work ethic and your character and your relatability and all those things. So, but that Cotton Bowl, we played Memphis. That was the game. I was interim OC, and Coach Pry was on the other side, on our side, but on the other side of the ball as the defensive coordinator.
Oh yeah, and I know going into 2020, I know that ended up. I'm sure that made you earn the title of so-called co-offensive coordinator going into next year as well, along with offensive recruiting coordinator, which seems to be I guess you say, the most consistent position you've held throughout your whole coaching, throughout your whole coaching journey.
Yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
the one thing I believe in, and it doesn't matter what title or position, is
Mhm.
I do believe that talent acquisition is our number one job as a college football coach.
Yeah. Mhm.
Your number one job in college football is to acquire talent. And I always look at it in three buckets: it's talent acquisition, and then as a coach, it's talent development. All
Mhm.
right, it's being able to bring that guy in, and through the coaching staff, and even more importantly, your sports science department, your strength department, your training staff, sports psychology, like everybody. We have so many people that touch these players. Like, how can we develop that player for him to be the best version of himself athletically, but also academically, socially, spiritually, the whole package, right? And then that last piece that goes into the coordinator role and our job, in the game planning process is talent placement. So we
Mhm.
acquire it, we develop it, and then now we got to put it in a position to be successful. But that talent acquisition part, none of the other pieces can happen without that. So I think it's always been something that's important to me. It's been a role that I've enjoyed, that I've always been enthusiastic to go do. That offensive recruiting coordinator role is a role of a lot of organization. A lot of decisions are made on, how to do certain things and when to do them as far as the calendar falls. But I believe recruiting is the lifeblood of college football, and there's nothing more important than that. So I've always been very passionate about it.
Oh yeah, it's that first box on that checklist that you have to check because I mean you cannot go any further down that list without, I guess you could say, consistently and nicely checking off that box first.
That's right.
Mhm. So we'll take a quick break and read off these sponsors because without these guys, nothing will be possible. I want to thank the Riles Drug Store here in McRae, jointly with Riles Outfitters, the Law Office of Joseph I. Marchant, the Merchants and Citizens Bank, Milton CPA Services LLC, Vineyard Doodles, the Cannon Law Firm, Jason's Fast Lube, and Triple Threat DJs LLC. Now, next point I do want to touch on is you actually touched on working with Coach Meyer a little bit, so I want to ask you a little bit more about that. I mean, you got the tight ends coach role there up in Jacksonville. You got, like you said, you got to work with a lot of great coaches and also see a lot of great and talented players. I know one in general. I'd say if I'm a fan of anybody on the Jaguars, it's probably Trevor Lawrence.
I thought you would say that, and
Mhm.
for good reason. For good
Oh yeah,
reason, you could be.
oh yeah, for sure. And I know being with me being a Georgia fan too, I believe his name slips my mind. Is it Walker? Trayvon Walker. Yeah, he's who's
Yeah,
now
yeah.
with the Jaguars too.
There's a few guys. You got Trayvon Walker. He was there afterwards, but
Yeah,
Tyson Campbell we drafted.
yeah. Hmm.
When we were there. He's one of the best corners in the league right now. Got him in
Hmm.
the second round. There were a couple Bulldogs on that team.
Hmm. Well, the question I'm working around to is, I mean, I know that your stint with the Jaguars only lasted one season, but tell me what it was like working with a coach like Urban Meyer, who's really seen his share of success.
Yeah, you learn so much of being with him about what's made him successful. You see the leadership skills, just the organization, the attention to detail. Like
Hmm.
I think when you look at any great coach, and I've been fortunate to work with some really good ones. The guy I work with now, Brent Pry, but James Franklin, Ralph Friedgen, Rob Ambrose, all these, Joe Moorhead, like really good coaches. And even at the Jags, right? You got Urban Meyer, but you also have Darrell Bevel, who's won a Super Bowl with the Seahawks with Pete Carroll, right? You got
Hmm.
Brian Schottenheimer, been around the game his entire life, put together some really good runs of offense. And I think you're always seeing those same qualities turn true. It's the attention to detail. It's obviously the work ethic, but it's also, and I thought Urban had a really good knack at this, and so did other people on our staff. It's also that ability to connect and demand in a way without being demeaning, right? To get the most out of your staff and the people around you. And you could see those things at times. I know that experience didn't turn out anyway the way we wanted it to down there. It was a quick year full of a lot of media attention and all that type of stuff. But you take some good from everyone and every place you worked, and that place was no different.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, I know the reason I wanted to really ask that question is because of what I could see that could be learned on the football side from Urban Meyer. I know you look at the stint that he had at Utah, and then the really dominant teams he had at Florida, and then especially what he did at Ohio State too. He'd really built up a great program at Ohio State.
Yeah, I mean, and I think for when you look at how he viewed trying to kind of put that model in place in the NFL, like for in college, you could see what had made him really successful is that number one piece I was talking about, talent acquisition, which his ability to relentlessly recruit. And then, those guys when he was when he was at Utah and Florida and even early in Ohio State with Braxton Miller and I believe JT Barrett was the other
Yeah.
quarterback. I'm trying to think back, but like his ability to create issues in 11 personnel spread run game. He was as good as anybody. They really invented that stuff, as far as all the zone read elements with sweeps, wrong way sweeps, and things like that. So just kind of being immersed in that knowledge, on a daily basis, you always pick up a few things, and football is one of those things. Everybody's doing something similar, but ultimately it's the people who can teach it the best and get the players to execute it the best. That's who's going to be good. So you're always looking for that edge of how to communicate the concept better with your players, and I think you could pick up a lot of that from the spread run game with Coach Meyer.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And next question. I know it may be a little bit tough to say at this moment. I mean, you may not have an answer for this, and if you don't, it's fine. But is there a favorite destination among all these places you've been that you've done so far that really sets it above the rest? I mean, whether it's the coaches and players that you've worked alongside, or if it's maybe the city along with the fans that make it as quote unquote built different.
Yeah, I'm going to take the easy way out. I wouldn't answer, which one was favorite.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest with you, I like to view myself as an optimist.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna be where my feet are.
Mm-hmm.
Every situation has a ton of positives, and I like to try to find those positives. Every place we've lived has had its own unique positives. It's had its negatives, and no place is perfect. But I enjoy meeting people, and we've enjoyed getting to know people from all these different stops, and even outside of football, you get to know people in the communities and friends that aren't on the coaching carousel that stay in those places. You get to go back and visit them and check up on how them and their families doing. But then from a coaching standpoint, it's all these trees. You meet one person and these things start branching off, and the guys are all over the country. So I wouldn't say that one place is more unique or special than the other. Where my feet are is the most unique, and that I'm super excited about what we got going on at Virginia Tech right now, because it is it's an incredible fan base. It's an incredible community. These people want to be really good. We got a staff here that wants to be really good. We're working our tail off. Last year, nowhere near where we wanted to be, but we're heading in the right direction. And that's what we're here to do. So the best stop's where I'm at right now.
I
And
got you. I got you.
I
That's
will
a
say this: I hope I'm here for a little bit.
oh yeah. Oh yeah, for
I'm
sure.
tired. I'm tired. I know my wife's tired of packing up, but
I
I'm
mean,
tired of packing up as well.
yeah, you want to be there long enough for the bags to collect a tad bit of dust.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. And that you throw away the boxes. You don't have to pull them
Yeah,
out.
you
That's
throw
right.
away them boxes too. But yeah, that's a perfectly acceptable answer to me. I know I know every one of those places has those big positives, and as you said, I mean, you'd be lying if you said there wasn't negatives at each place too.
Right.
So this is a perfect segue going into the next point you touched on about not being exactly where y'all wanted to be last year. So kind of a quick and easy summary of how you might talk about last year's performance, and if you had to grade it, whether it be out of a scale from a letter grade or either from 1 to 10.
Yeah. If I'm giving it a letter grade, I'm giving it an F.
Okay.
Just not good enough. Now we obviously we're a new staff. That was year one. I could come up with a laundry list of reasons and reasons why it didn't go well and things like that. But I'm not interested in talking about it. Nobody's interested in hearing it. The bottom line is we were 3-8 last year. But I'll say this: I think we were able to lay a foundation from a from a culture standpoint that's going to carry us forward. And I think that's most important in that year one is being able to establish that culture, what you believe in. And our head coach will say this all the time, and it's so true. There's not a 3-8 team in the country right now with as much optimism, positivity, and momentum in Power Five football that we have. We're recruiting our tails off right now. We're out recruiting the record we have, and that's because people see that study is closer. They see the vision. They see where we're headed. Now, going back on that year, the reason it's so frustrating is because we lost 4 games by a grand total of 11 points combined. And we were in a 1-possession game in the fourth quarter in every single game we played except for one. So I think that also creates that optimism going into year 2. Like as a coach, I'm never going to tell you it's good enough. I don't know if I'll ever think it's good enough. And that certainly was not. But I think that created some optimism. We've been able to go out, really bridge our roster from a talent standpoint in some areas of need where maybe we're young and we need to be a little older to kind of bridge that gap. We've been able to hit the transfer portal. Our high school class we brought in last year has been excellent so far. And that culture and foundations laid. I think it's a lot, when you've got a coaching change for, players to, they don't know what to expect on a day-to-day basis. Everything's new. And I think now we've got that foundation laid and the roster's in a better place. We're in a better place as a coaching staff just going into it. And I'm excited about the product I think we can put on the field this fall.
Hey, cool. What about preparations for 2023? I mean, so I'll add this question in as kind of to piggyback with it. How are preparations going, and is there anything in particular, in your opinion, that Hokies fans may want to keep an eye on? So at this moment, or is anything sticking out right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go all the way back. Once you finish a season like that, the first thing is it's just going back to our first point is you go out and acquire talent. So you take that time, you're out on the road recruiting. But from my standpoint, like that's when you start your self-scout process, right? And there's a ton of areas we need to get better at. But for me, it really all starts with we want to be balanced offensively. And when I say balance doesn't mean we want to be 50% run, 50% pass. Balance means we want to be able to do what the game requires us to do whenever it requires us to do it. So if it's a game where they're going to load the box and we got to throw it 70% of the time, we got to be able to do that. That's balance, right? If it's a game where they're going to give us a light box and they're going to let us run it 80% of the time, then we got to be able to run it. But to create those explosive plays in the pass game, off of your run game, you got to start with that foundation of running the ball, right? And that comes from me. That really is in my identity. That's a South Georgia boy that ran the wishbone in high school, but we didn't even run the wishbone with an option. We were just running 46 kick and trying to smash people with Anson McLean and different guys. So with Biff Rutherford at quarterback, but that's my mentality, and that's the same thing. Any good offense I've been a part of, we've been able to establish a run game that sets up the explosive RPOs, the play actions opportunities. So we've took a deep dive in that and what the reasons were why, and I think we're headed in the right direction from a run game standpoint. We wanted to simplify, get on the same page. We know our personnel better. So that's been the biggest thing, going into spring ball. And then, spring ball, we got a lot of new faces there. Like I said, we brought in 3 transfer wide receivers, a transfer quarterback that's thickly in the mix with the returning starter for the job. We got a running back transferred in as well. I know I missed one, offensive lineman. So we've had a lot of new faces, and that's not including your early enrollees and different guys on campus. So, we had 2 early enrollee quarterbacks, for example. So, spring was kind of taking that self-scout, but then also knowing you got a new cast of characters and how can we make those long-term fixes and then get those guys up to speed and start creating that competition and depth within our offense. So I thought spring we were able to do that. We took a lot of strides, and then summer, we the way the football calendar goes now, we can work with our guys with the football in the summer, which has only been around for about 2 years. Used to in the summer, you had to be very hands off. It was more of the strength staff's time. So now NCAA allows us 2 hours, and that can be on field work. It's all non-contact, but there's certain rules without getting into the weeds with that. But we were able to go. We had a OTA style practices this summer, and I just feel it's taking strides. And the biggest thing, though, just to go back, I think going into year 2 with the guys we have, with some of the leadership emerging, you're not going to have a very good football team if you don't have a very connected football team. And I think from our staff to our players, player to player, I feel that connectivity on offense, right? I feel that synergy, and that matters. That cohesiveness matters. It's still for all the transfer portal and the NIL and all the stuff that's going on that gets all the publicity, it's a team game. And with team success will come individual recognition. And I just feel that team aspect. Everybody's cohesive. Everybody's selfless. Everybody's working the right way. And I think that's the thing that's got, myself, our staff so excited was just the off season that we've had. Without getting in, there's a ton of technical and schematic things. I'm not going to get into all those that we've tweaked and changed to kind of hold some stuff back from Old Dominion. But
oh yeah,
but we've made some strides in a lot of areas, and I think that's why there's a lot of the recruits that have come to practice, the people who follow us closely. That's why there's so much positive momentum around the Hokies going into this fall.
Nice. I'd love to hear it. Now we're running short on time, so I'll get this last question in and say, is there like a mission statement this year that you guys are living by? Because as both you and I are Georgia fans, I know you look at Mark Richt had the finish the drill saying, and Kirby Smart has told Georgia before, you're either elite or you're not. So is there a mission statement that you guys like to live by?
Yeah, for us, it's all process oriented, one game at a time. The biggest thing that we harp on in the program from top to bottom are our fundamentals, and what we believe in as a program, and that's number one, accountability. That's what we're built on. We've all got to be accountable to each other. Number two, communication. You can't have a good organization or a team without communication. Number three, competition. We're going to create competition in everything we do. That's offensive staff versus defensive staff at practice. That's right tackle versus backup right tackle, starting quarterback versus backup. We're trying to create the most competitive environment in all of college football. And then details, self-explanatory. We got to be able to coach the details. We've got to be able to listen to details, and then our mentality. But that's what we preach to our guys. I don't think there's a big slogan or anything for us. It's all about going 1-0, and that's daily. But when we get to the games, we don't look forward to the season. When we talk about attacking the year, we attack each phase. Phase 1, our winter program. Phase 2, spring ball. Phase 3, our summer training, and then phase 4 being training camp, which we're about to embark on in about a week and a half. And we talk about winning those phases sets you up to become a winning football team. So we're about to finish up phase 3 and check that box and see how we did in that. And then we're going to go into phase 4, and that's how you become a championship football team. And then from there, it's process driven and going 1-0, one game at a time mentality. And that's what we believe in.
Well, hey, I love it. And we're coming in on about to run up on this 40-minute time. So thanks a lot for sitting down with me, Tyler. And I hope to do it again soon.
Yeah, man. Anytime. I got my Telfair County hat on, rocking and rolling here. Got my TC threads from Coach Burleson here. So it's always good to get on. I'd love to talk